Today at 1, the UK is unprepared for climate change. A stark report out today warns of floods, heat waves, droughts and wildfires and says government policy has stalled. Also on the programme, the police officer who was cleared of murdering Chris Cabba, who was unarmed when he was shot in the head, is to face gross misconduct proceedings over the shooting. A deliberate poisoning or a terrible accident, the trial opens in Australia of a woman accused of murdering 3 of her in-laws using poisonous mushrooms in a beef Wellington. We meet the woman whose eye was saved by the cutting-edge technology that can identify rare bacteria and transform diagnoses.
Thrilled isn't a big enough word. It's been transformative. My life has gone back to the life I led before, and I just feel so fortunate.
Dear Tom, I want to say that you were so brave, and to now be 103 years of age, what an achievement.
Letters to veterans. In an age of digital technology, we meet the children using the old-fashioned method to connect with wartime heroes and mark 80 years since victory in Europe.
Tonight at 6, the King says being diagnosed with cancer is a daunting and frightening experience. But the King, who was given his own diagnosis for the disease last year, says it has also shown him the very best of humanity.
This is a personal message from the King in his own words that gives us a sense of how he has coped as a cancer patient.
Also tonight, a court watches video footage of the moment the famous Sycamore Gap tree was cut down. After 100 days in office, bad news for President Trump as the US economy shrinks.
Donald Trump says that's not his fault as he tries to blame his predecessor.
The police officer who shot dead Chris Cabba will face a gross misconduct hearing following a review by the policing watchdog. Sergeant Martin Blake was cleared of murder by a jury in October. Cabba, who was unarmed at the time, was being pursued by police after the Audi he was driving was linked to a shooting outside a school in South London the previous evening. And 4 young people have been jailed after using teddy bears and karaoke machines to hide cannabis and ecstasy being smuggled into Jersey. The defendants were part of a network thought to have brought more than £1.2 million worth of drugs onto the island. And English councils are expected to get more aggressive with fly tippers. Cars and vans seized from so-called waste cowboys will now be crushed in a new crackdown. There were more than 1.1 million fly tipping incidents in England recorded last year. Australia's mushroom murder trial, a woman in court accused of poisoning her in-laws at lunch. A world first as scientists use living brain tissue to investigate dementia. Creeping closer to a cashless society and why it could hit poor people the hardest. We hear from veterans preparing to celebrate 80 years since the end of the war.
And today, the mercury hit 27 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow, it is going to be even hotter, but there's also the isolated chance of a thunderstorm.
Coming up on the programme, as Transport for London says it loses millions every year to fare evasion, we're out with enforcement officers trying to crack down on those who fail to pay.
Everywhere we go, we're falling across fare evaders. There's never a station we don't get one.
Also tonight, clogging up the Thames. A charity calls on the government to give a date when it will ban plastic in wet wipes. Plus,
It's important that people like myself are investing.
Sir Richard Branson on why he thinks it's a good time for business in London and his take on Trump's tariffs.
And as temperatures rise, we'll be sharing some of your pictures of London blooming in the glorious sunshine.
And a fire that spread from an electricity substation to a block of flats in Maida Vale yesterday was due to a fault on a piece of equipment, according to UK Power Networks. No one was injured, but around 100 people had to be evacuated from their homes after a neighbouring roof and a flat caught fire too. And a major exhibition of Italian fashion designer Gianni Versace's creations is to open in London this summer. Worn by the likes of Princess Diana, Kate Moss and Elton John, Versace was one of the most influential designers of his generation until he was murdered in 1997. The retrospective is due to open at Arches London Bridge in July. Next, a quick warning. You might want to look away in a moment if you're eating, because the next story is a bit gross. Thousands of plastic wet wipes thrown down the toilet are ending up in the Thames and have created an island of waste. A charity is now calling on the government to announce a date when it will ban plastic in wet wipes.